Okay.
You guys want to do the pledge?
You.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, let me go get it.
I wish I was having that much fun.
Oh,
I will be. I almost have to be. I want to thank you all for coming here. I really appreciate it. Before I start, we have somebody here that I only met recently, but she is somewhat of a notable person, Dr. Marlene McMillan. She is an author. She is the creator of the WhyLibertyMatters.com website, and she is an internationally sought-after speaker. And I asked her if she would say a few words before I begin, and she very graciously agreed to. Dr. McMillan, would you please?
Okay. Well, thank you, Al. You know, it's so much fun to talk to people who love liberty. And, you know, when you think about, I mean, meeting Al was so much fun. I already know almost everybody running in this race, and yet there just was such a difference of what he has to offer. So 2 points I want to give you as an idea to help you explain him to your friends. And one of those points is, what's the difference between a statesman and a politician? Because a politician will let go with however the wind is shifting, and whatever the way the wind is blowing is the way he's going to go. Because the politician doesn't have conviction, he only has preferences. So that's when the whip, you know, the congressional whip, you know about the whip. Why do they call him the whip?
Whips up support.
He tries to whip everybody in line. And that's fine if it goes with your conviction, but what happens when it doesn't? We need people who are willing to go and stand for truth and stand for liberty no matter what. The problem is a lot of our elected officials today have lost the goal of liberty, and I'm billed as the nation's expert on the principles of liberty. So I sometimes forget. I think, well, everybody wants there to be more liberty in the land and wants to promote liberty. But in reality, many people just want to give us socialism light, in essence. And so when what we have going on is, it's a matter of, are we going to have the slow boat to big government or the fast way to big government? And so it's time for a turnaround in this nation. And I really believe that what Al brings to the table is that he will stand for conviction when it's unpopular, when it's inconvenient, when his colleagues are ready to capitulate and give in. He'll still stand and say what he believes is true and stand for truth. So the difference between conviction and preference, and the difference between a statesman and a politician. These are things you know, but I want you to start thinking about how do you use those words to explain it to somebody else, because we really are in the balance between liberty and tyranny. So I have a little present for everybody. Come by and see me afterwards. And blessings, Al. You're going to do a great job.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, I have decided after that I'm ahead, so I'm just going to finish right here. Thank you all for coming. I don't know if I can top that. I also would like to recognize a couple of other people. The Honorable Steve Stockman, former member of the U.S. House of Representatives, former member of the House Banking Committee, and a co-author of the Balanced Budget Amendment Bill, is here with us. Congressman Stockman, please. I would have had him speak, but I would have to pay him money, I think. No, thank you so much for coming. He came all the way from Houston to be here for this. Also, I absolutely have to thank Cynthia and Johnny for lending us the use of their beautiful home for this event. It really means a lot. I very much appreciate it. Thank you. And everybody, please give them a hand. And also, my wife, Debbie, who's standing back there, who... When I decided to run for office, she said, "You're going to what?" But she has really, she's really come on board and is a very, very valuable asset to the campaign and is very helpful. She's bought into it completely now, haven't you? You told me that, right? Okay. So thank you very much, Debbie. I really appreciate all your help, even with, what went on for arranging this. A lot of people ask me, why would anybody, especially a nice fellow like me, want to go into politics, right? First you have to understand, what is politics? It's a two-syllable word. If you break it down, poly is a prefix that means many. Ticks are little things that suck your blood. That pretty much describes it. I have to give Ted Cruz thank you for that, because I got that from him, but with permission. And we run into each other on the stump all the time, and he's a great guy, by the way. Let me ask you all a couple of questions. I have two questions I want to ask you. How many people here believe that you are leading a better life, that you're enjoying a better life than your parents did? How many? Raise your hand. How many here do? Okay? Pretty much all of us. How many here believe that your children and your grandchildren are going to live a better life than you are living? See, that is very few. Very few believe that. And this is the first generation when that is true. This is the first American generation that does not believe that our children are going to inherit a better place than they had. That is why I'm running. The economic malaise that we all are so familiar with is only the tip of the iceberg. There is a huge potential. We're on the verge of an economic collapse, and an economic collapse will lead to societal chaos, which will lead to political collapse. It does it every time throughout history. We now are in jeopardy of losing not just money, the money that we all have or stand to lose in what's happening in this country is going to seem like the least of it. We are in jeopardy of losing our liberty, our way of life, our country. The founding fathers, when they created this country, pledged in the Declaration of Independence their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor for something that they believed was worth that much sacrifice: liberty. Every generation since then has paid dearly to preserve that gift. We are the generation that has benefited from all of their sacrifice. Now it's time for us to repurchase the gift that they gave us, to repurchase the blessings that America bestows upon her people. What went wrong? Have you stopped to think, how did we get into the situation that we're in today? There are a lot of people that have explanations. They'll talk about all different things that went wrong, and they're probably all correct. I think the most fundamental explanation of how we got into the circumstance that we're in today as a country is explained by the fact that the founding fathers created a system that intentionally would work only for a Christian population. They said that they presumed that the population possessed the Judeo-Christian morality. And if we ever lost that, the system wouldn't work.
Amen.
Alexis de Tocqueville a Frenchman, traveled the country, America, to discover what is the source of America's greatness. And what he learned, America is great because America is good. If America stops being good, it will stop being great. As we drift further and further away from our original Christian heritage, we lose more and more of our liberties. It's not a coincidence. It's of necessity. The liberties that the Founding Fathers created, they didn't create them. The liberty was given to us by God, but they provided a system that would enable us to enjoy it, was based on the assumption that the people would remain true to their Christian heritage. It's not written in the Constitution. You do see it in the Declaration of Independence, but you don't see it in the Constitution. Do you know why? It's not because they didn't believe it. It's because every colony that went into the formation of this country had it written into their constitutions. It was not necessary. It would have been superfluous had they written it into the national constitution. Do you know that a couple of interesting facts? 70% of the money that the federal government spends is for dependency programs. That means programs that pay people to stay dependent on the government. Someplace along the line, we bought into the idea that the federal government should provide a safety net, which sounded really good, a safety net for when people can't work, when people are sick, when people are old. But that safety net started to look like a hammock. But what it really was a spider web that traps people. We now have close to half the population, about 48.5% of our population, is dependent upon the government and pays no taxes. The other side of the population is supporting them. Now, I remember reading decades ago from a political philosopher, back when it was about 15% of the population was living off of the other 85%, I remember reading that when it gets to 50-50, you're at the point of revolution. Now, that does not mean that we're going to be out in the streets with guns shooting people who are on welfare. What it means is that the people who are paying the bills are going to say, I'm not paying anymore. They're going to say, why should we work and pay for these people who don't work and don't contribute? I'm going to stop. I'm going over there. I don't want to be a giver anymore. I want to be a taker. And then, of course, the decline accelerates. The economy cannot operate under that circumstance, so we then, of course, rapidly fall into economic collapse. And what follows behind that is never good. You have chaos, and then you will have what I described as the political collapse, which means in every case that a dictatorial, totalitarian, or fascist government will take control. And we are perilously close to that. Now, I sound like an alarmist, I know, but very, very well-educated people will bear that out. We are very, very close to the edge. Do I blame the Democrats for doing this? Certainly. Democrats, I believe, in many cases, are intentionally doing this because they have a way that they can personally benefit from it. However, that's not where my number one blame is. My number one blame is the Republicans that we expected to stop them who didn't do it. That's where I think the number one cause of the problem is. You know, we've had so many egregious things happen lately. I can't possibly list all of them, but just for a few. Did you ever think you would see the federal government of the United States take a military contract away from a United States company that earned the contract and is fully qualified to perform that contract, and give it to a foreign company that is of questionable repute, that is owned by one of the president's supporters, named George Soros. That just happened. Did you ever see that the federal government would try to rule, they didn't succeed at this, but they tried to rule that churches cannot hire ministers based upon their religious affiliation. They have to hire ministers no matter whether they believe in their religion or not. The federal government just tried to do that. They failed at that. Thank God they failed at one thing. Did you ever think that you would see when our federal government would dictate that organizations affiliated with religions like Catholic hospitals had to contribute to things they do not believe in, like abortion and contraception? We never thought we would see that in this country. Did you ever think you would see where our government would give billions of dollars to crony capitalists, cronies of our presidential leadership, and they would take those billions of dollars, form phony companies, and file bankruptcy within months with the billions of dollars disappearing? We never thought we would see anything like that, and we're seeing all of that happen, and I'm only talking about in the last 3-4 months that all of this has come up, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. You know, all of these things bring a lot of focus now to the presidential race. So people are very concerned about who is going to be, the presidential candidate for the Republicans, and can he beat Obama, and on and on. The President of the United States is the most powerful man in the world, and the presidential race is a very important race. There's no question about it. But it is not the most important race. It only looks like it is. It is not. The Founding Fathers did not design a system based upon us electing a perfect or even a good president every time. They knew we would mess up. They knew we'd make mistakes. What they did is they designed a system with checks and balances. There are 3 divisions, the 3 branches of government. The president is the executive branch. Congress, which is the House of Representatives, and the Senate is the legislative branch, and the judiciary is the Supreme Court and lower federal courts. These 3 branches are supposed to be checks and balances against each other. Now, in the case of the executive, the president, that means the judicial and the legislative branches are supposed to keep check on the president to prevent a rogue president from doing the kind of things that we've seen happen. The judicial can only act reactively. In other words, a case has to be brought to court before the judicial branch can do anything. So that means it is the prime responsibility of the legislative branch of our government. That means the House of Representatives and the Senate to be the check on a rogue president, an imperial president, some of the founders would call it. And they haven't done their job. People think that the legislative branch's number one job is to think up new laws. That's not so. Their number one job is to prevent exactly what has been happening for the last 3 years. They're not doing it. Thinking up new laws is a secondary function of the legislature. Have you ever wondered why it is that the people that we hire, that we elect to go up to Washington, seem to change? When they're here, they talk like John Wayne. They get up there, they act like Pee Wee Herman. Why? What happens? You hear all kinds of explanations. It's the money, it's the power, it's the air, it's something in the water. I think it's something very, very fundamental. I think that human beings have an innate need, desire to be liked and to be accepted. And that is the tool that they use up there to turn good people when we send them up there. You've got to go along to get along. You won't be respected. You won't be included. You're going to be treated as an outsider, as a nobody, unless you play along with the establishment. That's how they turn them. It's not money, it's not power. Sure, there are those things, but that is the most fundamental thing. Now, let me tell you a little bit about me, and then I'll explain why I believe that I have a particular personality trait that makes me suitable in this time, right now, to be up there. I have done a number of different things professionally and in business, but most of the almost 40 years of my career, I was a consultant. My job was to solve problems on computer systems for big companies when they couldn't solve the problem themselves. It was kind of like being the Red Adair, but in a much safer environment. Well, doing that didn't always make me popular, even with my clients. You can imagine that when a Fortune 500 or Fortune 1000 company spends $40 million trying to solve a problem and they all fail, and then they say, well, there's this dude down there in Texas who says he can fix it, there's nobody left, let's try him, that when I get up there, the fact that I am there is an embarrassment to them. I'm pointing out that they failed, so they don't like me. They didn't like me when I arrived. They didn't like me while I was there. And when I left, they still didn't like me. But the problem was fixed. I learned that in order to get things done, sometimes you got to be willing to not be liked. That's just the way it is. I learned that long ago, and I accepted it. My job was to go there, fix a problem, and go home, and that's what I did. And that's what I want to do in Washington, D.C. I'm not looking for a new career. I'm not looking to make friends. I will not be on the A list for any Georgetown Country Club parties. I can assure you of that. But I will take that with me. I know there are going to be people up there who won't like me. I'm willing to accept that. I've lived with that my whole life. I intend to go there, fix the problem, and then go home. Now, why would somebody want to go up there into the nastiness that's Washington, D.C., into that swamp infested by many little blood-sucking critters? To tell you the truth, it's not for me. And it's not even for you. Because, you know what? If we're honest with ourselves, we are responsible for this problem. We let it happen. And if you want to be really honest, we don't deserve the problem fixed. But our kids didn't do this. Our children don't deserve it. That's why I am doing this. Our predecessors passed on to us a free country, a land of opportunity. We had an obligation to pass that on to the next generation, and we're blowing it. That's why I'm willing to walk into that swamp infested with blood-sucking little critters, and I'll do it happily. And I don't ask any of you to go up there with me. I'm not asking you to go up into that swamp with me. I am only asking you to help me. I'm asking you to stand behind me and help me, and I will do it. Thank you, and God bless America.